Yahweh Yemelet Kibahar Zion Webe Yerushalayim Techaya Peleta Kamasher Amer Yahuwah Webe Sheredim Asher Yahuwah Kana. Hallelujah.
Wahaya kul asher yekira b'shem Yahuwah Yemelet. Wahaya kul asher yekira b'shem Yahuwah. Wahaya kol asher yakira b'shem Yahuwah Yemelet. Wahaya kol asher yakira b'shem Yahuwah Ki v'har Zion Ubiyah Yerushalayim Tehiyah Beleta Kasher Amar Yahuwah Wahaya kol asher yakira b'shem Yahuwah Yemelet. Wahaya kol asher yakira b'shem Yahuwah.
First broadcast.
Wahaya kol asher yakira b'shem Yahuwah Yemelet. Wahaya kol asher yakira b'shem Yahuwah Ki v'har Zion Ubiyah Yerushalayim Tehiyah Beleta Kasher Amar Yahuwah. All who call upon the name of Yahuwah shall be saved, shall be delivered. All who call upon the name of Yahuwah shall be saved, shall be delivered. All who call upon the name of Yahuwah shall be saved, shall be delivered. All who call upon the name of Yahuwah shall be saved, shall be delivered. Hallelujah, Yahuwah Elohim, unto you we bring our everything. That is why we pray and why we sing unto you, only you. Hallelujah, Yahuwah Elohim, unto you we bring out everything. That is why we pray and why we sing unto you, only you. Hallelujah, Yahuwah Elohim, unto you we bring out everything. That is why we pray and why we sing unto you, only you. Hallelujah, Yahuwah Elohim, unto you we bring out everything. That is why we pray and why we sing unto you. We proclaim Wahaya kol asher yakira b'shem Yahuwah Yemelet. Wahaya kol asher yakira b'shem Yahuwah. Wahaya kol asher yakira Shall be delivered.
Thought you were coming in right at the buzzer. Guys, I kid you not. Just a few minutes ago, we were stuck in the getting off work traffic here locally, and came in just under the buzzer to make this live stream. Welcome everyone to our first broadcast. There is a slight delay. There we are. How's everyone doing? So what I've noticed about this encoder for Light Unto the Gentiles, I'm able to use the screen share. Check this out, guys. You see that? That's actually the scripture analyzer that I wanted to share with you last night. But the other channel, nothing, as far as what I wanted to show you in a presentation on my computer, was coming up. It was completely black screen, which is suspicious. Let's just say. How you doing, Darla?
I'm doing well. I think we got to work on the mic because somebody said that it wasn't, they weren't picking me up so well yesterday. So, what is the control on that?
Right now, it is on the heart-shaped one.
Yeah, what else do we have?
The zero-shaped one, and then infinity.
Yep, that one. Let's try that one.
The infinity.
I think that will be better.
All right.
You guys, can you let us know how the sound is? That might be better.
Just really high up like that.
Yeah, let's try that.
How's that?
Can you guys hear me okay? All right, well.
It takes to getting used to
Great.
the slight delay that there is.
Yeah, there's a little delay. Very good. Well, I heard what you wanted to talk about tonight, and I was just thinking, just crossed my mind about how when somebody is kidnapped, like there was that teen in Utah that was kidnapped several years ago, and it seems that the kidnappers tend to change their identity, change what they think about themselves, get them to a different location so that they're disoriented. And that was what was crossing my mind about kidnappers. And how people they're taken over by whoever would come in and win a victory and take the people. And we were talking about the 10 northern tribes of Israel when they were cast out of the land. And they went into Assyria, and eventually the 10 northern tribes, they made their way across into Europe and then into the United States and other continents like Australia, New Zealand, and their language changed. Their identities changed. They forget who they are. And we were talking yesterday, we mentioned about how people tend to know about their grandparents and their great-grandparents, but they don't know a whole lot that went on before that, other than what they've been taught. And there's really a lot of evidence in the scriptures to tell us that will be a test.
It's not the best of the easels.
We bought a little easel stand a few days ago, and it's not much more than a three fishing poles tied together at one end.
Yeah, it's really the camping poles.
Tents.
In the tents.
Yeah.
So it's very rickety. But I just kind of wanted to bring that up so I can just write down some words that you may hear that kind of go around, things like Gentiles and church and things like that. And I want to kind of, in the beginning of this, kind of identify some of these people groups, and then go over some scriptures.
I'm going to get you another marker in case that one's a fail.
Yeah, it's very questionable. Now that is
Plan B.
There you go. Very good. The first one is, of course, Israel and Judah. Those two people groups. Quite often when you hear the term Jews, it's all encapsulating for everyone who is a Hebrew, and that is a mistake. That's not accurate at all, because Judah is what? Judah is one tribe, right? Israel is would be the northern, or we could also say, here's another word, actually, because it's the same, and that's Ephraim. Ephraim's another people group that's kind of thrown around. Then we have the word, let's say, Gentiles, which simply means nations. Generally, it would be those not keeping the covenant of Yahuwah, of the nations. Now these nations come, and you can find this in your scriptures in Genesis, when Abraham is under the stars, and Yahuwah shows him the stars and said, this is essentially what will be your seed, using that representation. And as I'm saying that, I'm just thinking about my little demonstration. So I'll pass it off to you in a minute and kind of set that up.
Okay, right.
So anyway, Abraham's seed, he's guaranteed to be the father of many nations, of many goyim. And by the way, guys, Abraham was not a Jew. Shocking, right? This father of many nations, he's not a Jew. He is what is called a Gentile, right? He came of the Chaldeans, from Ur, right? We know our Bibles. Okay, so traveling right along, out of Abraham came Ishmael and Isaac. And from Ishmael and Isaac, 12 sons on each side. This would be comprised of the nations. When you see the nations or Gentiles in your scriptures, this would be generally those spoken of. Okay, he does address, but not specifically call his people pagans or heathens, or those who keep the pagan festivals, let's just say, and pagan traditions. These are not his people. However, his people, when they were scattered, actually assimilated into these people groups, let's just say. So when you hear the term grafting in, this is why. And I see it almost as a farmer taking a handful of seeds, walking through a field and sowing seed, maybe it's wheat or what have you, into his field there. Everybody following? So let's see, what other words do we hear going around? We have another people group that came about some, 300 to 500 years after Yeshua, and that is what is called, here we go with the black one. Maybe I should write that in black. What is called the church. And we'll talk about the origins of that people group a little bit later. There's another term that's just coming to mind. The Netzarim. Netzarim? Who is that people group? Right? So we hope to reconcile some of these terms and make it a little easier for those who are having a hard time figuring out who we are and who they are as far as Judah. Judah being our brothers in covenant, right? So if the Father tells us in Jeremiah 31 that he will make a new covenant for the house of Israel and the house of Judah, two different people groups, and then we see, man, there's so much to cover. I'm trying to simplify something that can be very complex. So bear with me, guys. We see the Messiah, Yeshua, spoken of by the prophets, come to reconcile back to the Father a people group. Spoken of in Hosea, a people who were not my people, but now are my people. How many still with me? How about I do this? I'm still learning the controls with this live streaming. The volume's low, is that what you're telling me? How's the volume? Turn the gain up a little bit. Yes. So, let me bring up this here. Scripture Analyzer. I hope you guys are able to see this really good. Alright, that's why. So are you able to see this? I hope so. So I want to show you, we're going to be examining the word Gentiles. Some people have a hard time understanding and putting in perspective who this is. It's worse than before, they're saying. Time here. Well, is that all the way down? How about now? Talk back to me.
And so this is the delay.
It's the bad delay. I'm trying to get feedback from the chat group.
Oh, it's better. Thank you, Cynthia.
All right.
Thank you, Chris.
Let's continue. So we see the first occurrence of Gentiles used in the scripture is actually in Genesis 10. And it says, and these were the isles of the Gentiles divided in their lands, and everyone after his tongue, after their families in the nations. And folks, there was generally 70 nations by the time we get to the Tower of Babel. Actually is where we are here. As you can see, the sons of Ham, Cush, and Mitzrayim, Put, and Canaan. And the sons of Cush, Sheba, Havilah, and Sabta, and Ramah, and Sabteka, and the sons of Ramah, Sheba, and Dedan. And Cush begot Nimrod, and he began to be a mighty one on the earth, and so on. This is the first occurrence where we find the word Gentiles. You see there, the Goyim, in the nations of them. We opened up the channel citing this occurrence here in Isaiah 42. Behold my servant, whom I uphold, mine elect. Look at the words that are used here to describe this people group. In whom my soul delighteth. I have put my spirit upon him, and he shall bring forth judgments to the Gentiles. And then down at verse 6. And you who have called thee in righteousness, and will hold thine hand, and will keep thee, and give thee for a covenant of the people, for a light unto the Gentiles. And then again, 49 is another that I cited, but I know it's not going to let me do it in the New Testament. I tried that the other day and it was showing the Greek. It wasn't showing Hebrew.
Right. Well, what is the word in Greek?
Let's see if I go to Matthew. That's Zechariah.
So nations is here. Ethnon.
Ethnon. Ethnon is used, but I want to stay in the Hebrew occurrence of it.
Which is a great word to go look up, by the way. Ethnon. It sounds like it means race, but it doesn't. There's a little more to the word.
Right, Isaiah 66, and I said to you, I will set a sign among them, and I will send those that escape of them unto the nations, Tarshish, Pul, and Lud, that draw the bow, Tubal and Yavin, and the isles afar off, that have not heard of my fame, neither have seen my glory, and they shall declare my glory among the Gentiles, among the nations. Remember to go back here. I'll move it off. So if we look at Israel, the state of Israel, the actual geographic location of where it is, the southern and then the northern. When the northern was scattered, and this was done in at the time of Ezekiel prophesied about this, those tribes, folks, which were many thousands. We're not talking about a handful of people here. Each one of those tribes had several thousand, some hundreds of thousands of people, up to somewhere around 500,000 to over 1 million people went into diaspora 2,730 years ago. Now, if you look at what went into Egypt initially before the captivity, 70 people. And then some, how many years later? 400 years later?
4.
When they came out of Egypt?
Oh, yeah. Well, it was 430 years, but it was 430 years from the time Isaac was born. Where he was born was part of Egypt. It was really only like 210 years they were there.
So, in 210 years, 70 people actually grew to, some say, well over 1 million people in that short period of time. Integrated. And by that time, Ephraim and Manasseh was brought in, right? The mixed multitude. And was prophesied over that one of these boys would become the Milah HaGoyim, the fullness of the Gentiles. And this takes place in the diaspora, when these tribes are sent out. And they don't all go together, guys. They would splinter off into individual families. If you would imagine hundreds of thousands from each of the tribes, 50,000, 150, all over, and they all splinter and go to the different places that they went, which was Eastern and Western Europe, into the Caucasus and far over as India is some suspect because of the path that Thomas took, going over and ministering to the people in India. And you got to remember, Yeshua commissioned the disciples to go after who? The lost sheep of Israel, right? And so this is why they went and where they went into all these places. So I really hope this works. I have not practiced this, so I'm only assuming this will work. But this was the imagery given to me when I was thinking about this. If you think about the dropper as being the tribes, and I'll put 10 drops into the world, and the water represents the world. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And then we'll give it a little stir to represent movement, right? Look what happens when that many thousands of people went into diaspora to the four corners of the earth. Guess what they became? The fullness of the Gentiles. So when we hear that word, nations, Yeshua said, I only came. You can find this in Matthew 15 when he says, I only came for the lost sheep of Israel. And then he commissions his disciples to go after the lost sheep of Israel. Why? It's because Yeshua had come and reconciled them back to the Father. You see, Yeshua being from Judah and the one prophesied about, to come in and to be the atonement that was required by the Father to bring them back. This was the good news. This is the good news that Paul was talking about. This mystery that was spoken of in Isaiah, how this people who were not my people could now be my people, who had no Elohim. Now he is our Elohim, right? This is the great mystery and this reconciliation. And what happened, and this is the tragic part of the story, is some 300 years after Yeshua, we had what is called a Roman Catholic hijacking of the way. And from there, it just got a lot worse. Let's just say the church at that time, and this is where the word comes from, folks. This is when it's began its inception. Church comes from the Catholic origin, right? We were never called the church. Even Paul was referred to as coming from the sect of Netzrim. And if you go and look at where that word means, it means guardian. It means watchman. It means keeper of the way. Right? Netzrim comes from Yeshua being the root of Jesse, the shoot, if you will, the branch. All these words are connected, and this is who we are, Netzrim. And I'm trying to summarize here. I mean, be very summarizing what I'm saying. What do you have, Darla?
I have something I was listening to the other night. Would you like to read it? It's Romans.
Sure.
Want me to read it? Okay. All right. This is Romans 11. I heard a pastor talking about this the other night. And he was talking about who are the Gentiles. I say then, has Elohim rejected his people? Let it not be. For I also am a Yisraelite of the seed of Abraham of the tribe of Benjamin. Elohim has not rejected his people whom he knew beforehand. Or do you not know what the scripture says of Eliyahu, Elijah? How he pleads with Yahuwah against Yashrael, saying, Yahuwah, they have killed your Nebiim, your prophets, and overthrown your altars, and I alone am left, and they seek my life. But what does the answer of Yahuwah say to him? I have left for myself 7,000 men who have not bowed the knee to Baal. So therefore also at this present time a remnant according to the choice of favor has come to be. And if by favor, and this is the word you guys know as grace, and if by favor it is no longer of works, otherwise favor is no longer favor. And if it is of works, it is no longer favor, otherwise work is no longer work. What then? Yasharel has not obtained what it seeks, but the chosen obtained it, and the rest were hardened. As it has been written, Yahuwah has given them a spirit of deep sleep, eyes not to see, and ears not to hear unto this day. Deep sleep.
Deep sleep. This is Israel, and guess where Israel is hidden, folks? I've heard a teacher saying this the other day. Israel is hidden in this people group that people call the church.
Yep.
They have no idea who they are.
David also says, let their table become for a snare and for a trap and for a stumbling block and a recompense to them. Let their eyes be darkened not to see, and bow down their back always. I say then, have they stumbled that they should fall? Let it not be. But by their fall deliverance has come to the Gentiles, to provoke them to jealousy. And if their fall is riches for the world, and their failure riches for the Gentiles, how much more their completeness? For I speak to you, the Gentiles, inasmuch as I am an emissary to the Gentiles, I esteem my service. If somehow I might provoke to jealousy my own flesh and save some of them. For if their casting away is the restoration to favor of the world, what is their acceptance but life from the dead?
That's right.
Now if the first fruit is kodesh, or sanctified, the lump is also, and if the root is kodesh, so are the branches. And if some of the branches were broken off, and you, being a wild olive tree, have been grafted in among them, and came to share the root and fatness of the olive tree, do not boast against the branches. And if you boast, you do not bear the root, but the root you. You shall say then, the branches were broken off, that I might be grafted in. Good, by unbelief they were broken off, and you stand by belief. Do not be arrogant, but revere. For if Elohim did not spare the natural branches, he might not spare you either. See then the kindness and sharpness of Elohim. On those who fell sharpness, but toward you kindness. If you continue in kindness, otherwise you also shall be cut off. And they also, if they do not continue in unbelief, shall be grafted in, for Elohim is able to graft them in again. For if you were cut out of the olive tree, which is wild by nature, and were grafted contrary to nature into a good olive tree, how much more shall these who are the natural be grafted into their own olive tree? For I do not want you to be ignorant of this secret, brothers, lest you should be wise in your own estimation, that hardening in part has come over Israel until the completeness of the Gentiles has come in.
That's right. The fullness of the Gentiles, what I was just speaking about, prophesied, guys, way back, not in the Gospels, way back in Genesis by Jacob, when he prophesies that Ephraim will become a fullness of the Gentiles. In Hebrew, it's Milah Hagoyim. And this is where this paradigm happens with these particular tribes that are scattered into the nations. Listen, when you hear the term lost tribes, there is no such thing as lost. They're not lost. Father knows exactly who you are and where you are, right? You may not be in a place to accept it right now because of the indoctrination you may have gotten from whatever denomination or beliefs that you're in. But the fact remains that out of these 10, or you can even say 12, with Manasseh and Ephraim, into the now very powerful countries you know today that are among the United Nations, this is the Hebrews that were scattered. This is who they become. This is prophecy being fulfilled when Yahuwah says, out of Israel will come these nations, right? This is how it is.
What is that? It's called the effect when the kidnapped or the prisoners basically fall in love with their captors.
I think it's called the Stockholm.
Yeah.
Stockholm.
Yeah.
Something like that.
It is called that. Stockholm effect.
Stockholm effect, yeah.
And so Yahuwah said that when these 12 tribes, when they did not keep his commandments, they would go into other nations and
Serve
they
other
would
mighty ones.
serve other mighty ones that their fathers had not even known.
Yeah. Now, who is this? Who are these other mighty ones? And these images carved of stone and made of wood that you might see. Well, first off, right off the bat, the first culprit that enabled Israel to keep sinning with idols is the Catholic Church, full of idol worship. Guys, there's no being around the bush here. This is it, and a lot of Israel Hebrews are in this organization. 1.5 billion in the whole world. Yeah.
Right, religion is division, Miss Figgy.
Yeah, we're supposed to come out of her. What does her mean when we read this in Revelation 18:4? Come out of her, my people, is to come out of this church of confusion. This church of confusion in the latter days is exactly what that is.
And Tammy, we don't have any surprise that you have found out lately you have Hebrew ancestors.
Yeah. At this point, I don't think it really matters if, as you saw in the demonstration with the 10 drops of dye in the water, I think this was the intention of the Father. This was initially a blood war with fallen angels and Nephilim, the whole, the earth being flooded and destroyed. It was because of a blood infection that was not supposed to be. And it's my theory that this is why he took the nations and flushed out, if you will, the bad blood. Okay, that's just my theory. It's not a doctrine to build doctrine on, but in thinking about it logically, of why this happened, why he would kill, all of these different people groups, all the ites you hear about, the Jebusites and the Perizzites, and all the ites you hear in the Tanakh are the children of fallen angels, Nephilim, giants.
Right. And Yahushua said that we would know them by their fruit. When there's a righteous person that lives right.
Yeah. They'll either be a son of light or son of darkness.
And I think there's also children of the world that just that's their thing, is just to be a part of the world. They fit in very well.
Hallelujah, Victoria. That's why we're here and doing this. We recognize there is absolutely a need because there is a critical situation in what is called the body of believers right now, and that's an identity crisis. This separation between the church and that is Israel is false. There is no people group called the church. You won't find a gate called the church. It is all based on these tribes who were scattered to graft in those that Yahuwah would save.
We've picked up so many pagan words that we didn't even know. I found out today that English is like a lower Germanic offshoot. It's Low German. So we're obviously a newer language in history. But we're not High German. We're on the lower end of pure language. And there's so many deities that have come into our country. Have you guys seen some of the videos they put out about the statues?
Yeah.
Lady Liberty? Yeah, there's a deity named Libertas.
Columbia.
Yep. And we had the Baal temple thing they brought over here a couple years ago.
Yeah, and not only that, they started doing something with the Hindu gods, and they would portray their image on the buildings in New York a few years ago. Obama was still president at that point.
And I had something I had come into contact with. I didn't know anything about it, but we saw one year at a 4th of July event, they were throwing colored chalk on the kids and stuff.
Yeah, some
You
kind
ever
of
seen
festival
that?
that they do. Yeah.
It turns out that's some sort of a religious worship thing.
Yeah.
Queen of Heaven, I think that was what I heard it was related to. I just found that out the other night. Thanks, Miss Figgy, for sharing the channel.
We got any questions from you guys? Any suggestions? How is the stream going? Because the playback of the last stream we did yesterday, it was out of sync, and so there's obviously a setting I'm not getting right. I tried something different on this one.
Yeah, Victoria, we watched a video last night that was just over the top of how big trouble the country's in.
Yeah, deep state, dark government kind of stuff.
Just over the top. You know, and another thing is just being aware, being open to learning the truths. The Father's restoring so much to us. I counted one time, I counted like 14 different things. I felt like the Father wanted us involved in helping restore to his people. So some of that stuff is easy for people to say, I don't want any part of that. But other things are maybe a little bit tougher. They might be favorite things that we've held on to, and they're traditions that our families have done for as far back as we have any accounting of.
Right.
And so we shared last night from Jeremiah 16:19-21 that it says our fathers inherited only falsehood and futility, in which there's no assent and no value in it. So there's a lot to uncover and rediscover, unlearn and relearn.
Unlearn the lies. We've been fed a lot of lies, guys, and I'm no different than anybody else. And I don't claim to have all the answers. We're certainly on the right path. You know, when you are a good Berean and you start picking apart the scriptures yourself and deciding yourself what this means instead of being told in the different commentaries, a different light emerges. And I've seen this over and over. You're absolutely right, Vahid. That's Jeremiah 16.
Yep. There's been a lot of lies, but the Father's been restoring stuff since when?
I believe since 2009, 2010, around that area. And the reason is, if you go and look at Ezekiel 4, when the curse is pronounced on the two houses, Judah and Israel, Judah goes into exile for 70 years for not keeping the Shemitah, but Israel, because of their blatant and just outright walking away from the Father and idol worshiping, they were given a more stern sentence, which was compounded by 7 years because it was iniquity and because of a law written in Leviticus. They were punished 7 times more. So the number comes out to be 2,730 years. And if you count back, because we know when Ezekiel existed, we know when the final incursion into Jerusalem was, which was what, 721 BC?
Yep.
721 BC was the final ones. And we're talking about hundreds of thousands and even into the millions of people by this time, folks. So if 70 went into Egypt and several million came out, right? And then millions go into diaspora over 2,000 years, you can imagine the whole world actually becomes touched. Literally, all 4 corners are touched by Hebrew blood. So that's evident. You just track it back. There's no question. You can find the numbers of these tribesmen in the scriptures. It gives you numbers. You crunch those numbers, it comes back with astronomical results. Hundreds of millions of people at this point.
Gavin says, with time being short, how do the others wake up to this truth? Before you answer what you would think, I would just say one thing it would be very helpful is if people start drinking fluoridated water. Stop that.
That dumbing you down.
Dumbing you down. And what is the one that they have for they're putting something in the water besides fluoride.
Somebody else can help us out here. It's making
makes you docile.
Yeah, and men are made effeminate and things like that. It's loaded with estrogens and things.
And then I would also say, besides the fluoride, what are we doing watching TV? Like, that's programming. Programming.
If our children, if we are using the television or devices for babysitters, those developers and those programmers of those games are programming your children, and we wonder why we have school shootings. It's not because we have more guns, and it's not because we have guns at all. Just 50 years ago, we had, every house in the South had guns. People rode around with them in their cars, in their back windows of their pickup truck. So guns were everywhere. We didn't have mass shooting. Well, the programming wasn't there yet, right? It doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure that out. It's because of the programming. It's no mystery.
Yeah, we have to kind of step outside the system and kind of look at how is the system really running. And how come it's not running by the scriptures? Well, that's because Hasatan is running it.
That's right. That is right. I don't think there's really anything good on as far as television. We don't watch television. We don't even have one here. And the reason is because every channel that you go through, you do this if you have TV. Go and check. It's either witchcraft or there's something of a homosexual nature going on. There's several TV shows where there's you know, what do you call it, blended families. Where things like that are the norm. They're trying to program you into believing this is normal. And it is not normal. It's an abomination. And any civilization that did this fell. It's just a fact.
Processed foods is another issue. We have to try to start growing our own food.
I have to be really careful on speaking out about certain things, because what we're seeing on YouTube is extreme amount of censoring, and we don't want that to happen. We want to grow this channel. It is a necessity for those who otherwise wouldn't have a chance. The scriptures say there are many perish because there's a lack of knowledge. Scriptural knowledge is what that means. What the scriptures say. It's all there. If you want to find an outline of how things are going to be, the prophetic narrative is already there.
So that's probably the biggest thing is, does somebody really want what Yahuwah wants for them, or do they just want to run their life on their terms?
Yeah.
Because if they really want to please the Father, they're gonna read His book and try to get to know Him as best they can. And I mean starting at the front of the book. Like not cheating and starting 2/3 back and going, okay, I'm going to finish first. Because you can't really know the whole story if you don't read the whole scriptures.
That's right. You need the whole. Don't just read Paul. It's okay to read Paul. I'm not coming against Paul. But if you only know Paul and you don't know where he's coming from, and many of the quotes from him, he's quoting the Torah or one of the prophets, but those that only study the Gospels wouldn't know that. They wouldn't know that Peter cites Hosea and quotes from the Torah, or that Yeshua does, if you don't read the other part of the book. We hope to bring that to you here, and a little more that you may see on other channels. Now we will also cite things from the Gospel, from the New Testament. But we're going to bring the two together so that you can see the whole picture. Write some modules, you mean lessons? Well, we have a few things in the works, some ideas. We haven't revealed yet, some things that are coming that we're going to make available for the public. Right now we're just kind of setting the foundations for that and the actual resources to do it.
I think you're right, Victoria. I think it is going to get very bad, but every day that we wake up and it's not very bad for us, we can be preparing for what is coming.
You know, I wanted to do, vlogging with the other channel, Code Searcher, but there's an element of subscribers on that channel that don't like that. They only want to see me do code searching. So this channel, however, will be more broad, and we'll be able to do that. Hopefully, take you guys around with us via technology, live streaming or recording or whatever, and sharing some of our experiences. Maybe doing scriptural studies from a location somewhere, and sharing that with you.
We do still have Hebrew cards available. You can find them on the website, thecodesearcher.com. They'll be there. The cards will be there. You can order cards. And these, just so you know, are the Paleo Hebrew cards, and they'll have the modern Hebrew as well on them.
We're going to cover both on this channel, Paleo and modern Hebrew. I think if you are enriched with both, I think you'll see the scriptures will come alive to you in a way you just don't see in trying to understand the Greek.
Yeah, I think the Father's preparing us to help wake up people. Everybody is in a powerful place where they're at, right where they're at. There's a circle of influence that you're right in the middle of. And so whatever you can do to serve the Father and help restore the things that He's restoring, all the better. Because somebody I once studied under said, He's got nobody else but us. So that's what He's got to work with. So we do our best. So Vahid says he's prepping, but doesn't want to seem like he doesn't trust the Father. I'll remind you that Joseph told the Pharaoh to prepare for the 7 years of lack with the 7 years of plenty.
Yeah.
So that was the Father's wisdom.
There's nothing wrong with wisdom and being prepared and having some common sense, folks. If you are part of the group that have this escapism mentality, oh, I don't have to do that because I'm not going to be here. I would encourage you to go to read some of the writings of Corrie ten Boom, who was trapped. Let me tell you something. This was a woman out of Christianity, a Jewish woman who believed in the rapture, was taught the rapture, but they didn't see anyone come and save them from the Nazis. And she writes about this, about there were those who expected they would not see any tribulation. They were not going to go through anything like that, and yet here they were, and they had nobody to save them. And she made it through that and wrote about that. You need to be prepared. It's just common sense, and it's just good wisdom to do that. I'm not saying go overboard and be, some sort of, you can go overboard and do things, but just being wise and having, some water and maybe some things that do not spoil, like dried goods that can get you past the point of, that first 48 hours to 72 hours of a chaotic situation where people are rushing the grocery stores. Everything will be gone from shelves if anything happens. You need to be able to last longer than that, because there will not be, in a true catastrophic situation, that chain of you know, supplies coming back in may not happen. So you need to be able to withstand that. And you know, if you have to go on longer term, you need to be able to know how to grow your own foods. How would you get your protein? How would you get, you know, minerals and things that you need, your body needs? So it's just common sense to think about those kind of things.
Right, and you can try to ingratiate yourself in your community, be valuable to your neighbors. If you have a neighbor that has an apple orchard, and you grow the best parsley in your town,
Collaborate.
Yeah, collaborate.
And I think you will see that all over. The communities will come together doing just that. You can even be an organizer of that. Me and Darla was talking about a particular niche of, you know, freeze drying food and organizing some groups here locally to do that kind of thing.
Because that food lasts for 25 years.
Yeah.
Gavin, you asked about we might be used for the harvest. If you think about a garden needs more than just a harvest. Like, you have to make sure it has the right pH. You have to make sure that it has the minerals it needs. You have to make sure it has the right amount of moisture, but not too much, that your roots aren't rotting. So there's a lot of work to be done before the actual harvest. And we know that belief comes by hearing the word. So just to have a word to share. Sharing the word is about the best thing you can do. Yep. About the best thing that can come out of your mouth is the word of Yahuwah. It really is the best.
Alanites is asking, can you tell us again a little bit about the 12 tribes? And I don't know what else we're going to get a lot into the 12 tribes in the future, but if I could just sum it up, a little demonstration I just did a little while ago with the water. I got something to drink here. Demonstrates that these people groups, and we're talking about, you know, quite possibly up above 1 million people that went into diaspora, could circumvent the earth and dominate the areas and populate these areas with great ease. It's not like they disappeared off the face of the earth, right? So you have groups like Native Americans, and I'm not trying to be politically incorrect here, those natives that were on the soil in North and South America, and those native people who obviously came from somewhere else, and Islandites has a Hawaii connection, something we've seen with the Polynesian culture. They're obviously parts of these tribes that have been scattered. The oral history that we've gotten firsthand from someone is these people came in to the ocean from India, by way of India, and eventually populated much of these islands that are in and around Indonesia and Marshall Islands, Tonga, Fiji, Hawaii, and even down to Australia's way with you know, the Molokai of New Zealand. I couldn't think of the country, but it's obvious that these people came from somewhere else. They admittedly, you know, there's another history, were a seafaring people that were always migrating and moving from somewhere, and we see the effects of where they ended up. I think Native Hawaiians are part of Israel. They carry the traits of that. You see it in their idols that they have here on the island, just like other Israelites around the world. They still have those traits of carrying these idols.
So Joseph Dumont believes that those in Hawaii are from the tribe of Naphtali.
Which is very possible. And I've heard some, you know, scholars say that, like, the tribe, like the Cherokee Nation is of Issachar. It's incredible that they can see that. Darla and I lived in the far west for a few years, and I had learned from being there that there was actually petroglyphs and things that pointed to a Hebrew presence among the natives. Guys, they were carving out things like menorahs, and through paleo letters and things like that. There's no question that you know, that 2007, almost 3,000 years. Think about that. 3,000 years, these people went literally the four corners of the earth. This is why the scripture says to go to the four corners. When he sends out the angels to the four corners of the world to gather my elect. Who are these? And I should have put that on the board as well, the word my elect, and examine who these people groups are. It is the very same. It is Israel, the nations that are part of the nations.
So there's been some that have done extensive research on where these 12 tribes went. You can look up Stephen Collins on YouTube, and he's written books. He's written at least 4 books on Israel. Then there's Yair Davidi. He has videos on YouTube. There's Joseph Dumont has an excellent video on the lost tribes of Israel. I highly recommend it. It's got a lot of history, and I think it'll...
States like Spain and Portugal and, you know, France and Italy. What happened? We went offline.
We're buffering.
So we're buffering.
Are we on now?
It's buffering over here, so. Well.
We're back. Okay.
Yeah, we're
Thank
probably
you.
going to experience a level of hacking and things like that. I've learned from my years over at Code Searcher that I can draw fire from the enemy, and weird things can happen. You know, people friend you, and then just so they can harm you, infect your computer, things like that. I think this is what happened with the other coder for the other channel, because none of the functions work for it. I can't do any screen capture or do any kind of presentation. It's all locked up. But we'll cross those bridges when we get to it. And well, we lost half our viewers just by that. We'll look for some better equipment. This was something that was recommended for me, but it may not be the only one we have to use.
Yeah, and I do think that it does seem that here in Hawaii that we go through, or something goes through us where we don't always have 100% awesome.
Yeah.
Just it's spots here and there.
So it's showing we're offline again. We're getting kicked off. So we're gonna have to figure out what's going on.
Online again.
Yeah. Are we got kids that are streaming something or anything going on?
I'll go
Because
check.
that can
I'll go check.
affect the stream. We're doing the best we can, guys, with what we have. Try to make sure we have a better setup next time. I don't know why it's unstable. We're trying to figure it out. So weird. Seems to be okay now. We're going to be doing some other things too with this channel and the web page, 12 Tribes Hebrew. We will have a forum where you guys can participate, you know, with different things going on, post videos and you know, teaching and the different things that people like to do. There'll be an index there with different resources and yeah, Alan, I agree with that. That was kind of the point behind the demonstration I did with the 10 drops of dye. You see the water now representing the world. 10 drops of dye, and it touched the whole thing. The whole thing eventually became of the 10 tribes. And that's over a 3,000 year period. And the people of Hawaii have been here for just a little over 1,000 years. A lot of parallels we see with this people here. The fact that it's called Hawaii, which is, if you pronounce that in the other direction backwards, phonetically is Yahuwah. Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh. That's fascinating to me. The other fascinating thing is there are no serpents here. There might be a few bad people, but there are no serpents, actual snakes on this island. Just incredible.
How come we forgot?
How come we forgot? Well, that's actually a trait of Manasseh. Manasseh, it is prophesied. Manasseh actually forgets who he is.
That's the meaning of the name, cause to forget.
Yeah, that's the meaning of the name. Incidentally, the names in Hebrew should never be changed because, unless you're, you know, Yahuwah changes your name, which happens frequently in the Bible, you'll see. There's reasons behind that. But Hebrew names quite frequently have a specific meaning and purpose, right? If you go look at the meaning of the names of every person in the scriptures listed from Adam to Yeshua, it actually and very clearly and comprehensively tells a story of salvation in that. So we should not be changing the names. You know, and of course I'm alluding to the name of our Messiah. Some people say, well, why isn't it? It's not important. He knows my heart. I call him Jesus, and he knows I'm talking about him. But if you think about it, there's actually scriptures that tell us there comes a day where Yeshua actually says, depart from me, I never knew you. Why is this? Why is there a particular group that are in this deception that they're living for Yeshua, and he doesn't have any idea? I think it's because the enemy has worked his way into the church, right, and deceived a lot of people. That word, that name is less than 500 years old. There was no J in the time of Yeshua. There was no Jesus in the time of Yeshua. The apostles did not heal and raise the dead in the name of Jesus. They did it in the name of Yeshua and by the power of the Father, Yahuwah. That's who they did it in. That's a fact. So it does matter. I would submit that we should not be naive to believe that the semantics of it do not matter to the Father. If you look at the parable of the 10 virgins, the basis of that is an intimacy of knowledge of the awareness of someone, right? When he says, I don't know who you are, right? Why is this? Why does 5 of them who were supposed to be betrothed to this bridegroom, he suddenly does not know them? There's no intimacy of knowledge, of awareness of who that is. Something to think about, guys. We need to get serious with what we believe and how we walk in it. You know, if you're stuck in the, you know, just going to your Sunday social clubs, and you give your offering there, and you know, you feel real good when you leave, and this is what it means to walk in His way. You got a shocking sense of reality coming your way on that great day when it comes. Many will be deceived. The way's narrow, guys. If you think about it collectively, all those that claim to be the followers of the one who died for us, Yeshua, which is somewhere around 2 billion worldwide, 7 billion people, 2 billion claim to be followers of Yeshua. 1.5 billion are Catholic, right? And then you have the smaller denominations that fall in that group. If you are one who is in what is called the Restoration Movement, the Hebrew Restoration Movement, guess what people group you belong to? It's a very, very small group. I would say probably less than 200,000 worldwide. Did anybody just pick up on what I just said? If you look at the religious Jews in the world, out of 14 to 16 million Jews, less than 2% are even believers. And then out of the, quote, Christian believers in all of the world, 2 billion of them, how many are walking in the name? How many are keeping His commandments? How many are keeping His feast? Probably less than 200,000 worldwide. Are you understanding what I'm telling you? Somebody's going to wake up one day and be like, what did he just say? If you're walking in that movement, it's a very, very small niche.
Okay, Miss Vicky has a comment there.
Who will recognize which one?
Miss Vicky.
I believe you're right, but also believe that He knows our heart because everything. You're absolutely right. Hey, listen. He is righteous and just to save because of our faith. In spite of deception, in spite of wrong information, let's just say, you are saved. I was saved under the name Jesus. You're absolutely right, because that's what I believed His name was. Now that I've come to full knowledge of the truth, and any human being, you know, can do this. Just simply apply yourself into actively searching out to verify these things be true, right? You'll come to that place, and we discover, indeed, the name Jesus has only existed less than 500 years, right? It came about, here's a shocker, from the Jesuits. That's true. You go and research that. It comes about from the Jesuits, from the Catholics. As does a lot of things from Christendom comes out of the Catholic Church, right? So even Protestantism and all the things that we hold on to in Protestantism, like the Eucharist. Can you imagine? Walking away from Catholicism, becoming a Protestant, but taking with you all the traditions like the Eucharist, the communion. Those of you Christians that are holding communion, you know, every Sunday and doing stuff like that, that's the Catholic tradition. That was not ordained by Yeshua in the Scriptures. Actually, He was keeping a Passover Seder. That's what's going on there. So we have to let go of those traditions and examine really what is going on here. What do you got for us, honey?
Well, I got a little bit out of Revelation This is from Revelation 3, starting at verse 8. I know your works. See, I have put before you an open door, and no one is able to shut it. That you have little power, yet have guarded my word, and have not denied my name. See, I am giving up those of the congregation of Satan who say they are Yahudim, and are not, but lie. See, I am making them come and worship before your feet, and to know that I have loved you.
Hallelujah.
Because you have guarded my word of endurance, I also shall guard you from the hour of trial, which shall come upon all the world to try those who dwell on the earth. See, I am coming speedily. Hold what you have, that no one take your crown. He who overcomes, I shall make him a supporting post in the Mishkan of my the tabernacle
Hallelujah.
of my Elohim, and he shall be by no means go out, and I shall write on him the name of my Elohim, and the name of the city of my Elohim, the renewed Jerusalem, which comes down out of the Shamayim, the heavens, from my Elohim, and my renewed name.
And that is something we're going to boldly proclaim and teach to you, is the name. Something that has been taken from the scriptures and changed some 7,000 times. Now, this is a matter of importance, because in a day of distress, how do you are you to call on help if you don't know who to call on? It's a conundrum, right? So we need to know this name. And as you just heard from reading this particular people group, that the Christians believe are themselves because they are raptured out, one of the bottom line and identifying characteristics of this people group is what? The name. You don't deny the name, right? Interesting enough, if you also take a look at Psalm 91, which a lot of Christians like to hide behind and claim power in of Psalm 91, one of the identifying features of that is also, he knows my name, and therefore I will preserve him. Is that how it goes?
Yes.
So it's critical that we know this name, folks. And by the way, this is one of the mission of Yeshua when he came to reconcile us back to the Father. He was going around teaching the name to his disciples and to those around. Why? Because it was being concealed even in that time, and had been since the Babylonian exile. See, these Jews were in exile for 70 years because of the Shemitah, remember? But by the time Yeshua is on the scene, that is already over. There already some had come back into the land. Not all of them. Some stayed. Right, but some are still in the land. And they carried with them the same traditions as the sages had given them, which was, we will not speak the name. We'll conceal it. Did you know that? Did you pick that up in the Gospels and realize that Yeshua was actually teaching the name? Matthew what? I taught them your name. I think it's 15, maybe 15.
You talking about John 17?
John 17, excuse me. I don't know why I was thinking Matthew. See, I need her.
Here, let me read a few verses here in
John 17.
This is Revelation 7. And after this I saw 4 messengers standing at the 4 corners of the earth, holding the 4 winds of the earth, that the wind should not blow on the earth, nor on the sea, nor on any tree. And I saw another messenger coming up from the rising of the sun, holding the seal of the living Elohim. And he cried with a loud voice to the 4 messengers to whom it was given to harm the earth and the sea, saying, Do not harm the earth, nor the sea, nor the trees, until we have sealed the servants of our Elohim upon their foreheads.
Hallelujah. Hallelujah. So the servants of the Most High are on the earth at that time. And by the way, in Matthew 24, Yeshua gives us clearly an outline of how the end is going to be. And nowhere in there does he give us any information about a rapture, pre-trib, mid-trib, or any such. Right? He tells us what happens and what to look for. So we're going to help you guys see that using the scriptures. It's not just my word, my opinion on the matter. It is what the scriptures mean. And yes, you can reconcile what it means. It's not subjective to the person. You can know what they mean. And I submit to you, for a long time, the body, which is known as the church, has been going in the wrong direction, guys. And that included me. I'm not bashing the church, and I'm not abandoning, the belief. Let's just be very clear on that. I'm not preaching a different gospel. It's the absolute same thing Yeshua was teaching. Same thing. Restoration. And who? Going after Israel, the lost sheep.
We really have a responsibility to get back to what Yahushua was teaching.
Yeah. I think a problem with believers is in reconciling what Paul said and what Yeshua said, because there seems to be contradictions there, is actually not knowing the Old Testament. Because having that piece of information absent, you easily confuse the two and see the contradiction there. And it shouldn't be that way. Actually, Paul was a Talmudim. He was a keeper of the law. He knew the Torah. He cited the Torah. And I think he was just a man of compromise. For instance, the circumcision. When these Israelites had been gone 700 years, right? 721 BC. So already 700 years had gone by. They forgot who they were. They were not circumcised. They become Greeks. That's why Yeshua says to the Jew first and then the Greek. He wasn't specifying that salvation had come to the Greeks only. This is where Israel was. They had become Greeks during the Hellenization, during the Greek conquest. They were already there, had been there since Assyria, and then went further into the nations and into the Caucasus, and became those peoples and nations. This is the lost sheep Yeshua was after, folks, and this is the great mystery that Paul talks about. This mystery that Yahuwah scattered these people like seeds, so that one day he could harvest them and have this great harvest. And the disciples didn't comprehend that until after the fact, until after the crucifixion. After the resurrection, excuse me, even upon the crucifixions, they were still in the dark. Many of them were petrified and in hiding at that point.
You know, we should talk a minute about sound bites, what we call sound bites.
Sure.
I see Vicky's got one, Victoria's got one here. Well, I don't speak Hebrew.
Yeah.
As Joseph Dumont says, that just means that you shove it in a box and you don't look at it.
Yeah.
Because it's not that hard to pick up some Hebrew. Because it's in our spirit, it's in our blood.
You're going to pick up some Hebrew here, guys. We're going to give you a lot of it. We're going to show you the etymology of the word and in how these letters permutate into words and phrases that we know as our scriptures. I think you'll see a different dynamic as far as understanding with Hebrew letters, as let's say opposed to English letters or Cyrillic. If you're Russian, I don't know why I met a Russian couple today at the coffee shops. Anyway.
Well, He Knows My Heart, that's another one. There's a great video called Well, He Knows My Heart. I highly encourage everybody to watch that one.
Yeah, all these different sound bites. Yeah. He knows my heart. Well, what does the scripture say about the heart? The heart is wicked and above all things. Wicked and deceitful. So he might know your heart, but what does that really say? Your heart is wicked and deceiving and will deceive even you. So you better be careful about your heart.
What do they say about a deceived person? They don't know they're deceived.
Right.
You just got to study your way out of it.
That's exactly right. And I was deceived and came out of the Pentecostal movement, guys. Still got family. I got uncles of my father who are Pentecostal preachers. So I came out of it. You have to realize everything was poisoned. Going back to the original source, the original living water. you find that it is a different perspective than what you may have been in.
I would highly recommend everybody have a Strong's Concordance. That way you can look up the original words, whether it be Hebrew or the Greek. You can look them up and you can find out the meaning of them. I remember looking up the word for law in the Greek, and I found it very interesting because it talked about how you would give your animals what they could eat for that portion, and the next time you give them another portion, what they could eat. And that was under the Greek definition of law. I mean, like,
Portions.
who knew? Yeah, that's deep. That's really deep. You wouldn't give a steak to a 4-month-old, right? And that's part of what we talk about here. You're not going to give baby food, or you're not going to give the steak and the meat to the babies that need to be nurtured on the milk first, and but then they need to grow up. Otherwise, we got a bunch of fat babies that aren't doing anything. They're just sort of lazy and not expending any of those calories. I do recommend getting a hard copy, because what if, I think it's important. And also in the Hebrew, you could have as much as 10 words with the same 3-letter spelling. So it's great to go through all the definitions, and it's a little bit harder to do that when it's online. If you can pick up one at a used bookstore for really cheap, or they're only about $27 on Amazon. It's a really good bargain. It's a huge book just with a ton of information. Learn to love learning Hebrew and the Greek even. It's beautiful.
Don't let anyone discourage you, hearing things like, oh, they're trying to Judaize you. No, it's wrong language to be used in the first place, to use that as a derogatory term. We're trying to teach you the root of where you're from, who you are. It is Hebrew. Ibri is the word, which means to cross over. It's what the Israelites did, crossing over the Jordan River, or even through the Red Sea.
Right. Miss Vicky, I actually have a video on how to use the Strong's Concordance, and it's on the codesearcher.com channel, so you could check it out there. And if that doesn't help, I'd be happy to sit with you and show you. Just let me know. Oh, and we definitely want to invite you guys all over to the fellowship. We just started a fellowship group. We'll have it in the description here after this goes recorded.
Yeah. Take the time to set up an account. It's free. You don't have to do anything, but just set up a profile, so that you can contribute over there and be able to post comments and things like that, and and it will be a secure place for you to communicate.
I also set up some groups there today. Let's see, that we've got a prayer group there. We've got a group we call the Water Cooler, which is a very public place to just share whatever's coming into your day.
Is it like HipChat?
It's very much like HipChat.
Can I show HipChat?
Yeah, I guess so.
I don't know. Will I get in trouble?
I don't know.
Yeah. All right. So I kind of wanted to show them this.
Yeah. Well, it's just not that hard to get yourself set up, and you will see what we've got over there. But I put up a place where you guys could share recipes if you want. You could share like tips and tricks, the things, hacks, I think it's called. Let's see what else. We've got some ministry images. We've got some scripture resources online for you there. And just as we think of things, we just try to fill it in and try to help people bond and have a place to fellowship and share their lives and share their growth together. Yeah,
we'll also be at some point be using the Zoom platform that we have, which is our classroom, where I think up to 50 people can do this, can get on camera and chat back and forth. It's very great. It's secure. And it's a wonderful way to connect with people all around the world. And we are reaching here at this platform, literally reaching all around the world. The 4 corners are touched, and many nations are tuning in, whether it be live or archive. we see the results of that in the analytics, and it's such a blessing to see that we're living in a time where we're given the opportunity and enabled by the Father to reach many, many people. It's a blessing.
So we will be setting up a moderator. Island Nights, I hope nobody was being yucky in this group tonight. But in our chat room,
Yeah.
which is called Stride, somebody asked what it's called. We will have moderators there. There are moderators already set up.
Because we're doing a public broadcast, it will draw in people who just want to mess with you and do things and try to get you hacked with the things that they post. All of that is going to be monitored and run through filters. So if someone posts something malicious, they'll be tagged. We will identify them to their IP address, and we'll deal with that. So
we want to provide a safe place for everybody to grow and
Right.
be nurtured there, and to have the fellowship. You may be feeling like you're kind of isolated, like most of us.
find the support that
Yeah.
you need.
We'll be there together. Anyone that's not supposed to be there will be kicked out.
Yeah, and we'll be organizing different things locally as well. Like for instance, Passover's coming up. Many are interested in that, and what that's all about. We'll be sharing with you guys here on this channel. We'll set up some cameras and make it a teaching opportunity, so that you can see that what Yeshua actually did with his disciples is very different than what you may be experiencing in your communion or your Eucharist ritual, which is, by the way, a Catholic thing. Yeshua was not participating in a Eucharist, folks. I assure you that. It was a very intimate Passover Seder that has a very profound spiritual meaning behind it. He was actually teaching what was about to happen to him. So we'll share things like that with you, and more to come.
So we will have it in the description below when this video is recorded and finalized. But it's basically 12tribesebri.com/AlightUntoTheGentiles, and each of those words, Alight unto the Gentiles, has a dash between them.
What are you giving them?
This one here. If you click on here, there we go. That's
This
where
one?
they're going. Yeah.
Okay, so hold on. I'll give it to you in the chat room here.
Perfect.
There you go.
There we go. You guys go over and sign up for the fellowship. We'll all get to know each other.
Yeah. We hope to connect. Do we eat kosher? Yes, we do eat kosher. Do we eat kosher so that we're saved? No. We eat kosher because it's just a good recommendation for the Father. Actually, I mean, he gave it as a commandment, but the basis of it was so that you're not a obese and very unhealthy person. God said, you can eat bacon. It's an unclean animal, and I know for some it tastes very good, but what is it really doing to your body? So, bottom feeders. I was a big seafood eater for many years growing up in the South and in Louisiana. I loved oysters and shrimp, but they're not kosher. They're not clean, and they will make you sick, if not immediately, in the long run. Okay, oysters can have a concentration of heavy metals and things like that. They clean from the very toxic Gulf of Mexico in places where they are harvested. It's just not a healthy thing to do. So, we're not going to teach you that you're going to be cast into hell because you like to eat a bacon sandwich. We'll discourage you because of the health risk. I mean, really, if you go and look at the research and some of the videos that are out there about pork, you may decide that you're right. I don't want to eat any pork. So
yeah, you start having health issues when you get a little older, and it'll be like, what do I got to carve out of this so that I've got a better outcome for myself?
you know, we just live. We try to live healthy, and we're not vegetarian. We do eat fish, and we do eat beef and chicken. But we keep his commandments and his statutes and his ordinance, and all is well with us. Is what the Scripture says. What is that from Deuteronomy? What 28, 26?
Are you talking about the
blessings?
blessings?
Yeah, blessings and curses.
That's Deuteronomy 28. So I would encourage you, when you're reading the Scriptures, when, as Yahushua said, when you see it, you do it.
Yeah.
It's blessed is not he that not only hears, but hears and does. Mm-hmm. And that's how Yahushua lived. He didn't eat pork. He didn't eat shellfish. He didn't eat lobster. So we want to be as much as we want. We don't want to miss the boat for something like that.
Right.
We want to be included in the Father's way, and we want him to know we're his children, not you're not my children. We don't want him to think that we're about living life the way we wanted to live it.
Right.
We really want to serve him.
Are we getting takeout?
We're not getting takeout.
Okay. All right, guys. We got any questions before we close it out? It's been a really enlightening first broadcast.
Yep. Scales and fins.
Yeah. For your fish, you want to have scales and fins. Okay, so we'll be doing this more often. Darla and I working as a team, sort of like Kathy, Lee, and Regis, but not.
Yeah, we don't have a 100-person crew.
Right, it's just us. But we're going to try to make our broadcasts and some of the recordings that we do more high quality than normal.
It's a work in progress.
Yeah. Thank you to those that are subscribing and are partnering with us. We love you guys. Until the next broadcast, we will see you on the website. So be sure to subscribe and join that email group, and we'll see you there. So shalom. We love you guys. Be blessed in Yahuwah.